Thank you very much, and very good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for taking the time out on a Wednesday afternoon to join us for what I feel is a very important discussion with three very distinguished guests. I'm sure Malaysians in general were very excited about the first change in government, since independence. And unlike many other forums that's been happening for the last week and a half in Kuala Lumpur, I'm really not interested in what's happened in the last 100 days. I think all of us in this room will agree that this 100 days is very much an American invention about this thing that you need to assess a government after 100 days. I think anybody with any ounce of logic would know that you really can't assess the work of government within such a short time. So really, what I'm really more interested in is how do we move forward, given the fact that we've just had a change of government and the government seems to be settling in. So what is the new Malaysia heading to? What can we expect from the new government? And also, more importantly, what can we expect from the new opposition? So I have three guests with me this afternoon who can really share their views. And I think their views are extremely important because they're not only part of the political class, but really, they are the people who will shape what Malaysian politics will be in the coming years. I'm very pleased to have my guest, YB Fahmi bin Mahmud Fadzil, who is the new MP for Lembai Pantai. Prior to a political career, I'm sure you all know he was a very famous writer, actor, and he's very well known in the Klang Valley for being the star of the Fairly Current show. He's also a chemical engineer by training, and I just confirmed with him that he's a graduate from Purdue University, Indiana. And the good news is that I've been told by many of my reporter friends that he's easily the best looking MP among the newly elected MPs. See? I'm right. Good. So next, my guest is Dato Seri Diraja, Dr. Zambry Abdul Kadir, who really needs no introduction, a former Menteri Besar Perak and currently the Adu for Pangko. He holds a PhD from Temple University in Philadelphia, but what is not widely known is the topic of his PhD. He actually wrote his PhD on Parti Islam Malaysia. And finally, a guest from the other Malaysia, from Sabah and Sarawak. And we really can't really have a full panel talking about the future of Malaysia without talking about East Malaysia. And my guest is YB Dato Seri Nancy Shukri, who is the Member of Parliament for Batan Sadong, and she was formerly Minister in the Prime Minister's Department. And YB Nancy is a law graduate from Howe University in the United Kingdom. And she also holds an MBA from Ohio University. Okay? So today's format will be slightly different. Rather than presentations, which I think is quite boring, I will have a conversation with my three guests. After that, we will have a Q&A with the audience. So I'll start off by asking YB Fahmi, now that the Pakatan Harapan administration has settled in nicely, can you tell us what the priorities will be for the next 12 months?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is a pleasure and an honor. I'm a first-term MP, one of 90 out of 222 who are first-timers in Parliament, which means that I think this new cohort would probably see things slightly differently from many of the other veterans, yeah? The way that they have been conducting things in Parliament. Hopefully we'll see a more exciting session of Parliament. I think the next 12 months, I broadly sketch it out in three overarching themes. The first has to do with cleanup, that over the last couple of months we've seen, as well as the next several months, every minister that has gone into his or her cabinet will primarily have to do things related to kind of forensic auditing, some kind of stock take, as well as the kind of changes in where the agencies are located, or some agencies are shut down, some new ones may be introduced later. But essentially there is a kind of stock take, being aware of what has gone on. We've heard recently, for example, that the Minister of Finance spoke about up to 34 billion ringgit, which appears to be missing from the GST input tax refund, as well as the income tax refund. But earlier on, I think YB Kobin, the Minister for Communications and Multimedia, mentioned that I think there was an amount coming up to 6 or 7 billion under the where telcos contributed to that fund under his ministry, which was under the direct purview of the minister in charge. And where have all of these funds gone, for example? In Kuala Lumpur, the FT minister, for example, has had to very obviously answer the question of what has happened with the 64 parcels of land, which now we're being told, we had a meeting yesterday where all of the KL MPs, KL, not KL and Putrajaya, but the KL MPs sat down, and we were briefed that some 97 parcels of land in total, not 64, are under investigation for the kind of sales that have been going on. So that's the first one, which is essentially clean up. The second overarching theme has to do with fulfilling the 60 promises of Pakatan Harapan in our manifesto, which now comes down to about 36, maybe, with the 24 that have in full or in part have been fulfilled. And the third one, actually, which is more important, and I think a lot more people want to know, is what is the way forward? How are we going to inspire the economy? How are we going to drive economic growth, for example? How are we going to deal with all of the questions of the day, whether it's got to do with consumer spending and consumer behavior or consumer confidence? How are we going to also questions about reform, generally speaking, institutional reforms and things of that level. Essentially, I sketch it out in these three overarching themes. This coming Saturday, we'll be seeing a Congress Bumiputra, which I hope will start some interesting conversations about where the kind of policies that we have for one of the major groupings of communities in Malaysia. What is the direction or the way forward? I think come 15th of October, we'll start with the review, the midterm review for Rancangan Malaysia ke-11. And then on the 19th of October, we'll see the announcement of the 2019 budget. And between now and then, there'll be a lot of talk about budget. But what I, as a member of parliament in KL, what I'm quite interested in and quite excited by is gazetting the KL City Plan 2020, as well as the process to review as well as to update the KL City Plan for 2040. So all of that is taking place.
Okay. Can I ask you, YB, Dr. Zambry, speaking for the opposition, what do you think the government's priority should be over the next 12 months?
Well, I think I'm not in a position to comment what they are supposed to do. I think they know better what they are supposed to do. I think they have all the plans, as mentioned by Fahmi just now. But at the same time, of course, the people want to see something out of it, because you're right for saying that it is not about 100 days. But in the final analysis, what people want to know about what is your policies, what are you going to do to the people, and also, of course, the most important thing that people have been talking about, your manifesto, for example. There's something that you have to fulfill it, because this is part of your promises to the people. So I don't want to comment for me, because I know that you all just formed the government, because it's unfair for me to give the comment, because BN and UMNO has been there for 60 years. I think it is unfair, this juncture, for me to say, oh, you are not good, you are not bad. I don't want to be like that. I want to be objective enough at this stage. But
yes, but the question was not about what your criticism. I'm saying, what do you think the government priorities should be?
The government priority should be, in my eye, sorry for my opinion, is that, of course, whatever promises made to the people must be fulfilled first, because you have come out with all that. People are expecting that for you to do it. Failing which, I think people will judge you in the next maybe couple of years from now. And in the final analysis, people will pass the judgment in the next election, for example. For example, whatever government you have, or the new government came into place, for example, you will have this the sentiment of higher expectation if you are talking about the theory of rising expectation, this is quite common in the sociological term. People are talking about it. If you don't fulfill what you have promised the people, then you will have another condition where people feel deprived of their right because they expected very high from you to fulfill that. As a result, people will give a fair judgment to you next. So I think I stopped there for part of my answer to you.
That was what I call an answer with no answer.
It is about the priority. You asked me about the
yes,
priority.
but I mean, if the question is now, speaking as a former Menteri Besar, surely you have an idea about where you think the country should be heading. What are the key priority areas?
If you are asking about where it should be heading,
yes,
it's the different issues. But if you ask me about what the government should
do,
yes,
obviously,
as of now, of course, people are expecting, but people's expectation is very high.
Yes,
because they want you to fulfill all your promises. But of course, looking forward, for any government, of course, they want to come up with the policy, the right policy in place. For example, if they are talking about Malaysia Baru, they have to underline what Malaysia Baru is all about. I think they have to come into that and then to delineate all the policies, initiation, because otherwise it's going to be very difficult for people to understand where are you heading actually. So we are still looking. People are still looking at this juncture. I don't think it is proper for people to judge, as I said just now. But of course, they have to come up with proper policy to tell the public, because we cannot simply dictate. The public cannot simply dictate. But if you are asking the public to dictate, because the public will come back to you asking you to fulfill all the promises. That's all.
Okay. YB Nancy, what are the expectations of the people from Sabah and Sarawak over the next 12 months?
Well, to me, the government has to move on. Because you see, being in Parliament for the past, the first session this time, we have been hearing that, it's the BN side that have been doing this and that. Almost each and every MP or even minister have been pointing fingers to the previous government. I was in the previous government. But, for a while, yes, it's okay. It's okay to hear that. But when you hear that every day, I think they have to move on. I know he can take it. He can take it. Because we have to be very frank. Because the people want to hear, what is it that you're going to do? Now, if you keep saying that, okay, ask Najib. And say, hey, you are the government now. Why do you ask the people before that? And then, like Lim Guan Eng said, tahu ke tidak? Yes, I said, of course, you are the one who should know. You're the minister. Don't ask us. We want to hear what you're going to say to us. So this is what we expect. I am a rakyat myself, and the people have been talking to us. Hey, what is the government doing now? We thought we have expected tomorrow minyak turun bila kita menang, and then tol dihapuskan. So you see, I said, never mind. You give them the chance. To be fair with them, the government is new. We cannot simply criticize for the sake of criticizing for political reason. I like to criticize people where they know that what they can do for the future, and they will tell us what is it they want to do for us, because we are also rakyat, so that we know what to expect in the future. Now we have been there, the BN government have been there for 60 years. Of course, they have gone through a lot of things. They have made mistakes. We have made mistakes. And then, for myself, this is my third term. I've learned throughout the way. And then we see that, being in the government, being minister, being an MP is not easy. And I think Fahmi could we were just talking about it. It's not easy. Trying to adapt to the new situation. So that's why, to be fair with the new government, we just have to give them time. But we cannot afford to hear them keep blaming, pointing fingers at the past. Now you have to move on. Do whatever that you feel that should be done, and then this will be a new opening for the people. Now you must remember that this is the first time it ever happens in Malaysia. And if this happened, the change of the government happened this time, it can happen anytime in the future, because they have tried it. So that's why we would expect the government to do the best that they can do, that they should not be looking into and by blaming the previous government. Look into what you can do now, and then be good at it. So we are all expecting something good, and I for one would want to see how the ministers communicate with us, especially in Parliament. When I ask the minister, when I talk about, for example, I was asking about new policies that you can share with us. For example, under the Ministry of Women Affairs, it was not answered by the DPM, but it was answered by Deputy Minister. Answering me, talking about like Sarawak, she was referring to Biro Wanita. I said, come on, there is no more Biro Wanita years ago. So something is wrong somewhere with your documentation. So this is the kind of thing that you need to update. Forget about looking for mistakes that have been made, but improve it. Because you have to show proof that you are capable. You have to show that you are also very professional. Don't simply take whatever they have given to you. Like I was a minister myself, I would go and study what have been given to me. No, unless it is something in writing, answers in writing that I don't have the time to look into it. But if it is an oral question, I would make sure that I will go through it, because I don't want an answer where they say, oh, kita lagi tengah kaji. I said another one, the same thing. When I was asked this time, how do you find this new government? Well, it's the same thing. You're answering the same question the way they had been given to us. Lagi tengah kaji, lagi tubuhkan jawatan kuasa. Forget that. Even during my time, I said it is a taboo for me. Don't give me an answer where you still want to survey. You want to tengah kaji keadaan. Don't give me that answer. If others get fed up with it, so do I as a minister. I've been telling that to my officers before, but this time I still hear that, and I want to hear something new. So move on. That's what I want to tell the new government. Move on. We are with you. Especially from Sarawak, I've been telling myself, okay, I must remind myself I'm no more with BN. My fellow colleagues there in Sarawak say, you remember, you are GPS, you are not with BN, you are friendly, but must be firm. So when I talk about being firm, well, we go to another topic later, yes. Then I'll tell you why I have to say that. And I must really be firm. Thank you. Thank you,
YB. Well, obviously, the sort of message I'm getting is exactly what a large section of the Malaysian middle class, in my world, I call that the Bangsa class or the Starbucks class. They all seem to be complaining that perhaps the PH government is moving a bit slow. And I think there was also a bit of chattering and a bit of worry that when you look at the Prime Minister, he seems to be surrounding himself with the people he had when he was in power 22 years ago.
Can I just interrupt you there?
Yep.
You see, what I heard normally from the ministers from PH side, well, we will bring it up to PM. Hey, PM is not the government. The cabinet is the one you should be referring to. So therefore, they should correct themselves. We cannot afford to keep referring things to the PM. I don't think it's fair for the PM, because it is the cabinet that should be deciding for the government.
YB Fahmi, would you like to have a comment?
Yeah, I wish Dato Seri Nancy was this firm with Najib dulu.
I was.
Outside.
I was. You were not there.
I'm also in.
I was. I must tell you that.
But it is
Dato
down
Najib was
within.
very approachable.
Okay.
I was. Yeah. If I behave this way now, I behave like that before.
Yeah. Actually, I think Dato Seri Nancy is probably because I've been going to Parliament since 2010. So I've been following at that time, working for Nur Izzah, and just seeing the performance of ministers. And I have to say that maybe Dato Seri Nancy is probably one of the few ministers that I enjoy seeing how she parries and thrusts questions in Parliament.
Thank you.
Yeah. Although I want to on the last day of this session of Parliament, this recently concluded one, during the debate on the motion to reinitiate investigation into 1MDB, the words that I used when I was debating the motion was closure, that Malaysians want closure in order for us to move forward. But closure can't happen if we paper things over. Closure can only happen if we are able to confront and produce the truth. And from the truth, then at least we can reconcile. Because in the case of, say, for example, 1MDB, as it is, that's why I mentioned that I sketched out these three overarching themes. Some people ask, Fahmi, aren't you sad that you're not a minister or a deputy minister? No, I'm kind of thankful right now, so I can see what, as a backbencher, what goes on and how things should be, could be, and try to improve myself that way. But when you look at just how the immensity of some of these things that we've discovered, sure, I agree maybe in terms of how we've communicated it in public. I always remind myself that I'm no longer in the opposition, that I'm now a backbencher on the side of the government. But what does that mean? I feel that sometimes backbenchers also have to be friendly but firm with the administration. My ardent desire as a Democrat is to see how I have to tell you that I have never seen some of these former ministers work so hard in Parliament. Yeah, fantastic, fantastic. Some of the for example, Ahmad Maslan, for example, dari pagi sampai ke malam, he's there, right? Yeah, and you have to tip your hat off to someone like him. So I think I agree. We have to move forward, but we have to have closure. In order to have closure, we cannot run away from what has happened. We can't paper things over, and at the same time, we need a very strong opposition. Always. The one thing that I learned in some of my travels is in South Africa, when Nelson Mandela won in '96, and he wanted to form a unity government. He invited all of the opposition to join him. All but one party joined him, which was the Liberal Party back then. They had 6 MPs. And they said, no, in order to make sure that we have a strong, a viable opposition, to have a strong democracy in South Africa, you need to have opposition. So it was the work of those 6 MPs back in 1996, which now is seeing what could possibly be the coalition that could take over from the ANC today. So in other words, you have to plan 20 years ahead. This 9th of May didn't happen overnight. It was 20 years in the making.
Okay, well, I think that's a good time to move on to the opposition. And I wanted to ask YB Dr. Zambry, given the reality of the situation now, what is the current thinking in UMNO on how to position UMNO and perhaps past politics towards the future?
I think first of all we have to reflect and to do a lot of introspection. Prof, being the power for more than 60 years. In fact, UMNO was set up in 1946, so more than 70 years. That's such a long time for a party to survive. And we have to do a lot of, first of all, I think, like it or not, this is the first time we experience this. We used to experience in other states, for example, in a smaller state, like Perak, for example, we used to experience before at least 11 months before. But this time around, the whole country collapsed. Yeah? So we have to do a lot of introspection. We have to be prepared ourselves. We have also to reset, our priorities and as well as our mind. You cannot, leave as a government anymore, because to change that it may take some time. Yeah, some people like waking up from the dream, suddenly he feels a new reality like that. I think you all knows that. Even like myself, for example, people ask me, "Hey, what's going on with you?" I'm okay. I said, my style is just a bit different. When I was in the military, so I can sleep anywhere in the kampung. I think you've all been following that. But of course, for some, they can't. But that's why I said, first of all, you have to do a lot of introspection and soul searching for the party, and to set a right footing for you to move forward. So, as an opposition, you have to look at the probable outcome. Otto von Bismarck, the former chancellor of Germans, he used to say that the politics is the art of the possibles. You never expected, you never dream in your wildest dream that one day pass and the AP will work together. And similarly implies to that Tun M, for example, to work with his the strongest nemesis, none other than Anwar. So as a party for the future, we have to look into the probabilities. What are the probabilities lies? One of the probabilities to me is that the UMNO and Barisan Nasional will take up as a strong opposition now. Yeah? In order to do that...
Sorry, can I ask the very simple direct question? Does Barisan Nasional actually still exist?
Oh, wow. It still exists in name, but you can't dismiss MCAs and MICs for that matter, despite all whatever people say. In fact, our Sarawak, Sabah's members, of course, practically we have to be frank about it. It may not actively involved in inter-party activities, but as a party, it still exists. We never make any official declaration whatsoever from our highest leaders to say that we don't want that anymore, or we are officially announced that going to announce that BN is no more now. I think at this stage I must say that BN is still there, but along the way we are also looking into several possibilities. Whether are we going to form a new alliance? That is one of the questions, whether you like it or not, that this has to be discussed openly with the members. And number two, if you want to form the new alliance, which party are you going to work with? All right. So there are several possibilities. It could be with number one, fast as you pose your question just now, and it also could be with other parties as well. You never know. As I said just now, politics is the art of the possible. So looking from all possible angles, that is our first plan. But the second possible plan is to remain as a credible oppositions. In order to do that, that's why I have to tell also this, that the members from the government side probably they won't persuade some of our members to join them. Yeah.
But the reality is that UMNO held its retreat recently in Jandabai, but basically nothing came out of it. What I want to know from you is that what is UMNO thinking?
Of course, openly we don't come out to say that we have done this or we have done that. There was some strategic decision made. We have discussed on the possible scenarios, and we have come out also with certain directions. And the most important thing is to bring up back all our members together, because as a party that never experienced this before, you like it or not, number one, you have to bring everyone together. So there are many matters discussed in our Jandabai. Of course, some we can discuss openly, but of course there are other points also we may not.
Okay, let me put you on the spot. So what is UMNO's unique selling point going forward? What are you selling?
We are selling, I think, not you like it or not, UMNO must come up with a new brand. A new brand doesn't mean that you have to forgo all your philosophical foundation and your struggle. We have been discussing on the possibility whether UMNO should be open to the non-Malays as well. But if we want to do that, so we have to also face we have to open up another battleground, facing our members from PKR, where they have been there for numbers of years. But some of the members feel that, the leadership even feel that we have to maintain on our struggle, but at the same time, we have also to change some of the practices by giving more on the moral compass to the party, and also the party must be rebranded. Yeah, you must produce a new type of leader that is not purely based on certain sentiment, but it must cover every aspect, including by looking into the new concept of what we are facing today, the new concept of Malaysia as well.
But that is really interesting point that you raised. You're trying to rebrand yourself to come out with something new.
Yeah.
But in the most recent UMNO party elections, all the people who were elected was from the old group. That's one thing. And secondly, can I just finish?
No, let me qualify that. There are some, of course, we don't deny that, because being a mass-based party, you like it or not, we have 191 bahagian, and then consisting of based on record, more than 3 million members. So of course, you have all types of leaders and members. So it is very difficult just to focus into one that, or did we want this type of leadership. But of course, you have to bear risks in the meantime. But at the same time, you can see a lot of changes happening. Even if you look into the bahagian analysis, for example, you go into the cawangan analysis, you can see a lot of changes happening. Except probably we need to look to do a lot more at the top leadership.
Sure, but as somebody who, well, probably not an expert on Malay politics, but it seems to me that we're going back to the past, because now Barisan Nasional is essentially MCA, MIC, UMNO, the founding fathers. The other interesting thing is that PAS is now locked into the northeast states of Malaya, which is where its original base is. So it looks like Malay politics has moved back completely to the 1950s.
It is hard to conclude at this stage, because politics is very dynamic in the first place. Because whatever happened it's not purely based on the state issues. It is based on the national issues. Any decision made basically will affect certain demographic and or psychographic analysis. You are in the line of political science, the psychographic. So the most important thing what we have to do is to look into the overall political dynamism in Malaysia. You might also look into the new tendencies among the Malays, not only in the East Coast area, but also in other states like Johor. You never dreamed that in Johor you can have PAS, RAP, Perak, for example, for that matter. We used to have in the 1950s, and then later on in 1970s, 1 or 2 members only from the PAS members. And now, for the past 2-3 elections, you always have 3 or 4, or sometimes you have 4, sometimes you have 5, and this time around they have 3 members of PAS. So it is a widespread phenomenon. You can't simply focus into one particular area or based on the demographic analysis in particular area alone. So in the overall analysis, I think it all depends on what brand of politics that PAS would like to bring in. It may also come up with a new narrative. Last time they come up with new narrative, and this time around they came out with new narrative, and maybe then the next election they may come up with a new narrative that's something sellable and ownable. So we do not know. This is very dynamic.
Sure. YB Fahmi, what do you think the direction of Malay politics is heading?
I feel that if we're not careful, by the time we get to GE15, what you'll see is that there will be a ratcheting up of religio-racialist sentiment that is more extremist in nature, more radical, more exclusivist, that does not bode well for the future of the country. I think this is one of the big worries because for me, I see that as a danger for the country itself. So the political opportunism that presents itself to political parties, and should they decide to embark on this kind of use of exclusivist vocabulary, political vocabulary, coupled with more radicalized action by fomenting certain narratives, yeah, that are exclusivist, us and them, to become a new right Trumpian force, so to speak.
But the reality is that has been going in every election since the 2000s.
Yeah, but it might be exacerbated. It might be made worse. That's my worry. And what you'll see is that there might be a peeling away of elements from the federal opposition, and that the more moderate forces within within the federal opposition also might become engulfed. I, for one, was quite sad but relatively heartened to see the performance of someone like Khairi Jamaluddin, the MP for Rembau. He got 60 votes, again. 60 divisions voted for him in the UMNO presidential race. But still, I think, like what Dato Seri Zambry said, some kind of soul searching is necessary. I think if UMNO is not careful, and the kind of things that we're kind of slowly seeing, whether in Sungai Kandis, in Seri Setia, the raison d'etre of UMNO, where do you want to go after this, right? I think what's necessary for Malaysia is, that's why I focus on the word closure. I agree that we have to move forward, but I think we have to be careful with the kind of options available to us. That I think the idea of the Malayan and Malaysian body politic has always been quite moderate, has been very acceptable, moderate, inclusive, and in fact, the one thing which I've remarked to several of the foreign missions has been the lack of happening when 9th of May, on the 10th of May, there was practically nothing happened. Not only because Dr. Mahathir announced a 2-day holiday, but also because it was very calm. I think we have to be careful and cautious about segments. I mean, we of course know that knave that is Dato Seri Jamal Yunus. So will we see, when I say the employment of more exclusivist and more radicalized form of extremist tendencies, do we see more of him in the future? I think Malaysians, they see that, okay, oh God, okay. So if the reports coming out of Gender Baik is true, the reports of these kind of sources say that, okay, they're asking people like Dato Seri Jamal to kind of, okay, relax. I think that might be actually quite good for Malaysian politics. Yeah.
No. You can't avoid at the same time throughout history. Certain personalities, regarded historically, some of the people considered as a fascist or racist, whatever term you use. Sometimes it's a product of political dissension, and also because of the manufacturing process. Professor Chomsky's mentioned that always. Sometimes you can manufacture certain personalities, but the most important thing, whether are we condone to that kind of people or not? Whether we condone, the party itself condone that kind of personality is very important. And whatever you say about UMNO and Barisan Nasional all this while for the past 60 years, agree it or not, we have been the protector of the nation in terms of maintaining peace and prosperity. At least peace and prosperity. We will never condone anything of or promoting people's like certain personalities who talk so much about the other race, or criticizing these people or criticizing that people. So we have been trying very, very hard. But of course, along the ways, you will have this kind of personalities. You will have one or two, this one, but how strong you are, how you must have a leadership conviction, to face this kind of personality. You will never allow this kind of personalities to cease in our Malaysian politics. That's very important. There's a point that I want to stress also. I agree with you, Fahmi. In our political culture in Malaysia, in particular, we can't allow certain personality as such. It is not only from UMNO, but also from other parties as well. Yeah, we have to put cross to all by not. We must not only focus to particular parties. Thank you.
Well, I think now is a good time to maybe shift our discussion a little bit towards East Malaysia. And I feel quite strongly that one of the underreporting of what happened in G14 is the story of Sabah and Sarawak. I think for the first time in a long, long time, both states are now ruled by political parties that are not part of the federal coalition. So for example, in Sabah, Parti Warisan is actually not a former member of Pakatan Harapan, but it's an ally of Pakatan Harapan. And in Sarawak, of course, we have the GPLs, the rebranded old Sarawak Barisan Nasional. And I think the other underreported story was the role played by Sabahans and Sarawakians' feelings towards the Malaysia Agreement in 1963, and of course the rise of state nationalism on both sides. I think this issue is not widely reported on this side of the South China Sea, but I think we need to discuss it because it has major, major implications for the entire country. For example, Sarawak has just asserted its rights over all the oil and gas resources in Sarawak. They're actually challenging the PDA, the Petronas' right to control all the oil and gas resources throughout the country. And as many of you know, right, the big portion of the Malaysian development project is actually Petronas' money. So can you imagine what happens to the Malaysian development project if Petronas are no longer in control of the entire oil and gas resources in the country? So YB Nancy was the co-chair of the Federal Cabinet Committee that dealt with this issue. And that's the reason why I invited here, and I wanted to hear from her. And exactly what do the people in Sabah and Sarawak hope for the PH government when it comes to this issue, MA 63?
Thank you. Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity to be able to share with the people. Well, we have been there since during the BN government. I was involved as the co-chair, as you mentioned. We have been discussing, I must give credit to the late Chief Minister of Sarawak, Tok Nan. I've been discussing with him on a program called Federalism when I was in charge of law. But after that, I was no longer in charge of law, but I was taking over this role as co-chair for Devolution of Power. If you ask me, PBB is a party that has really been putting forward on all this, claiming the rights for Sarawakians, so for Sarawak. And then you were mentioning just now, it was underreported, was not many people would be interested in this, over this side of Malaysia, but only Sarawak and Sabah would be interested. You know why? Because a lot of Sarawakians would say that we have been feeding and we have been enriching, I'm sorry to say, we had been enriching West Malaysians. This is the issue that had been mentioned in Sarawak, and I've been receiving this because when they heard that I'm coming here, now mention it. Now when we see the Twin Towers, the Petronas Twin Towers, now look at us. What happened to us in Sarawak? So now we are talking about MA 63, maybe for those who are uninformed, what is MA 63? This is an agreement that combined Sarawak, Sabah, formerly it used to be Singapore, but they ceased to be a member in 1965, and of course the Federation of Malaya. Now, it is very important to us because this is where that agreement, that was the one which was supposed to safeguard the interests of Sarawak, interests of Sarawakians and also Sabahans. And of course, we were talking about oil royalty, we're talking about the soils there, whatever that belongs to us, and the rights of the people, how we should be protected, how we should be safeguarded. But now, well, I'm glad before the election, Tun M did mention that, he realized that Sarawak and Sabah were, the word that he used was terabai, neglected. And he also mentioned that he was inheriting the system that was practiced by the predecessors, and also he promised that PH will give the oil-producing states, especially Sarawak and Sabah, 20% royalty. And in Parliament, I was very much involved in ensuring that this would be a focus for PH to realize it for us. When the Prime Minister was asked by the other MPs about the 20% royalty, then he agreed that yes, we are going to give 20% royalty to all oil-producing states, and that will be against the profits. But when he was out of the day one, he was asked by the media, and he said, yes, we're going to give them 20% out of net profit. And this is where we all have to wake up and tell us, you know, if you're talking about 20% out of net profit, this will be against all the expenses that we made. Then what would us in Sarawak be getting? If we are talking about calculating how much we should be getting now, it will be like what Lim Guang En said, here is the trillion that they should be giving it to us, because we have not been receiving so much. And before, when you talk about MA63, this is the reason why Sarawakians now being very, very aggressive and being very they're very protective towards themselves. So this is why we are telling the people about MA63 and why it is very important to us, because Sarawak and Sabah are still considered as very backward in terms of development, whereas over here now people are talking about no GST, no tongkat and everything. Now you expect the tongkat from Sarawak and Sabah, they say, no? All these are becoming jokes for Sarawak and Sabah now, that we give you the tongkat and we all here in Sarawak, we are still backward. Now you may be asking me, why do we allow yourself to be like that before? Now I got the privilege to ask people who were in authority during that time, why did we just accept 5%? Now we have to be fair with Petronas. This is Sarawakians. They are very, very, very nice people, very humble people. They are still very forgiving people. They said, okay, we have to understand what Petronas is. As they have to spend money for the starting of the activities, oil mining activities, the exploration and also exploitation activities. The infrastructure costs a lot of money. We didn't have to spend a lot of money. We didn't have to spend any money, and they're giving us job. At the same time, Sarawak at that time was still greens. So therefore, we should be thankful to the federal government. Yes, we are thankful to the federal government until a lot of our people are becoming very educated and also knowledgeable in terms of oil and mining, and know what is to be done and how Sarawak should be compensated and should be paid. So this is why MA63 should be kept alive by us until the PH government sits down and discuss with us. And I'm glad they have committed to say that they're going to sit down, they're going to form the task force. But for information of everybody in the hall here, we had a committee. I was one of those chairing the committee, and before the election, we were already going towards the second phase, where we were already talking about quantum, how much we should be getting. And we were already there. So do not say that some even Sarawakians said that, you know, Sarawak MPs did not talk about it. Why we did not talk about it anymore was because it was already in the process of being given due attention in terms of quantum. But the rest of it, Sarawak officers, Sabah officers, the federal officers, they were all doing their jobs. They were all doing it professionally, because they knew that this amount is due to us, and we should not be backward as it is today. We should be getting a lot more, because we need that money for us to develop the state.
So besides the oil and gas thing, what exactly is MA63 autonomy? What exactly do Sabah and Sarawakians want,
well,
besides the oil and gas?
Of course, in terms of development. And we, well, of course, there are other things as well. You know, Malaysia, when Malaysia was formed, we want to maintain in terms of religion. We want to be free from being tied up to whatever religion. In our constitution, it is not mentioned Islam as a religion for Sarawak, but we acknowledge the fact that Islam is a religion for the Federation. And in terms of education, English, we still practice English until today. That's why even in court, they can still use English as a language.
What you mean English is the official language of Sarawak? Yes.
We are also free to use English as a medium, and of course immigration is one of our key the power whereby we control all those who naughty ones who want to come to Sarawak. Don't say that we are just controlling the opposition at that time. No, we were also controlling those from UMNO, BN, those who are naughty in the sense that, because when we say naughty, you see Sarawakians being so humble. We say naughty because we can't stand people who label people, who shout at each other, who use all those vulgar words. We can't stand that. So we use immigration to control them. But of course, the British at that time was also very kind to us. Why they want us to control immigration was because they knew Sarawak was not developed yet. So therefore, we need to have that small piece of cake for Sarawakians. So these are among them.
Sure, but one of the arguments, a strong argument that's put up by the people on this side of South China Sea is that once you are members of the Federation, you should play by the rules of the new Federation. Why do we need to keep looking back to 1963?
Well, because that's where the sentiment is. You see, the sentiment of Sarawak for Sarawak. Sarawak first. This is what we have been telling ourselves. Sarawak first, because there's a lot of things that is in Sarawak that needs to be safeguarded. Even our culture. You see now, with the rise of a lot of political parties coming in, and we are just watching them, the way they behave when they come in. So the culture is just different. Not that we have different nose, different eyes, different. It's not that.
I'm just wondering whether that argument is valid, because you talk about Peninsula parties moving to Sabah and Sarawak. But as far as I know, most of those parties from Peninsula Malaysia, for example, I'm sure you're referring to DAP and PKR, which won it in the recent election. My understanding is that almost the entire leadership of those PKR Sarawak and DAP Sarawak are actually Sarawakians.
Yeah.
So what is so special about Sarawak for Sarawakians?
Well, if you talk about now, if PKR and DAP they're already there, it will be just like what we had gone through like last time, BN. But last time I must say that we did not make mistake, because BN, that was the first party that we had as a coalition, because we needed help at that time. But now we are almost we almost developed in that sense. You don't need people from over here to help us. Okay, we can manage ourselves. We don't need to bring that, because they have been telling us, well, you have UMNO there, but UMNO didn't come into Sarawak. They respected us. We said, you don't come into Sarawak, let us work together. But the AP and PKR, they are there, and now they are now just like followers as well. They don't have that voice.
I think I have to step in here and say that there's an alternative viewpoint to why UMNO is not in Sarawak. And I think the obvious answer is the reason why UMNO was not in Sarawak, because you had a strongman in Sarawak that kept delivering the same number of seats to Barisan National elections after elections.
Without them, without anybody from here to help us. But of course, I must appreciate what the federal government had done to us. They've been giving us a lot of help in terms of development as well, even though it's not enough.
Can I give an opportunity? Why be Dr. Zambry?
Not enough. Okay, so anyway. Well, that's why the Sarawak for Sarawak is very important, because that sentiment, we don't want people from here to come and control us. So that's why we have been delivering the majority all the time, and that's why until now the people over here are still watching us, wanting us to come and to join them.
Why be Dr. Zambry? How do you feel about this MS63 issue?
Well, that's part of the understanding and the agreement signed some time ago. But of course, at the same time, it also involves some political analysis in it. As what Dato Seri Nancy mentioned just now, I think they have every right to voice out, and it is part of the culture, if I may refer to Barisan national culture, because how we build this, the consensus building, and then the discussion. If Dato Seri Nancy can clarify this as well, how the process of discussion has been going on for quite some time as well, right? And then we are trying to reach out what is best for Sarawak as well as for Malaysia.
I'm just wondering whether you're overselling, because if there was so much consultation, so much discussion going on, so where do this feeling of Sarawak for Sarawakians come in then?
It is not. This is not, because the most important thing in the principle of coalition, because you have to remember, it's all from along the political alliances. So in order to reach certain agreement, you have to sit down together. You know, of course, you don't get everything on the table, and you put up your proposals, and the other side also put up the proposals, and of course you will come to certain agreements.
Forget about the past. We're talking about the present and the future. Now that Sabah and Sarawak is very clear, they want the full implementation of MS63. Would you personally support that process to give them the full autonomy that they want?
This is part of the content of their agreement. If that is agreeable upon, why not?
Including if they own all the oil and gas resources.
Why not? Why not? Because there's part, if you look at the Barisan Nasional's manifestos.
For the members of the media, that is the headline tomorrow.
That's part of the agreement. I think you also agreed during that discussion.
It's not mentioned.
It's not mentioned. In fact, part of the Barisan Nasional manifesto as well to relook into that.
No, I'm not about relooking. I mean, you will have no problems voting for a law that says that Sabah and Sarawak own 100% of all the oil and gas rights.
But that one has to be sit down first, because it's not. I think in your context also, I believe even the new government, this is not something that you can just simply sell the idea like that, because it's about the forming of government, and also the relation between under the federalism and also. No,
but what they're talking about is a legal agreement that under MS63 they were promised a series of autonomies, and that the general feeling in Sabah and Sarawak is that this was not respected in the last 50-odd years, and therefore the rise of state nationalism, and now they're coming back and saying that, you look at the government of Sabah, Sarawak, totally different, we want our own thing and we want full autonomy. Are you going to give it to us?
No, my position, if you ask me as a leader, I prefer the principle of negotiation and consensus building.
Okay, why be Fahmi?
Sorry, you should not ask them whether they should give to us. We should dictate.
Okay.
How much we should be giving you want to give.
Yeah, that's a point.
It is for Sarawak to dictate now, because we have our oil and mining ordinance.
Yes. So why be Fahmi? I have to put you on the spot on this Malaysia Agreement 63. What is the current thinking among Pakatan Harapan parties?
Yeah, we were in the process of writing the manifesto. I think we discussed quite long and had a series of engagements at that time with our colleagues in Sabah and Sarawak particularly. I think I'm cautious about the word autonomy to an extent, that not at the expense of the Malaysia project, not at the expense of the idea of Malaysia itself. I think that for me is a heartbreak. Like, no, I didn't step into parliament just to see us sign off. For example, if autonomy means, breaking away, that's not. I don't think that's also what our colleagues in Sarawak.
Okay, concrete example. Would you support a law that says Sabah and Sarawak own 100% of the oil and gas resources?
I don't think my leaders would agree to that. I think this is quite...
But it is in our soil, okay?
I understand.
It's for us to control that.
Yeah.
We should be determining how much we are giving to the federal Petronas side.
Actually, something interesting also happened of late. We've been quite lucky that we have suddenly now more proactive members of parliament from a state like Perlis, for example, the MP for Kanga and MP for Arau, both of whom have been quite vocal in parliament. Perlis has three MPs, right? And 2 out of the 3 are very vocal. And sometimes the discussion in Perlis, one of our smallest states, and makes me also wonder, okay, we talk about being just and being fair to Sabah and Sarawak, but sometimes when I hear them speak, I wonder, are we being just and fair to Perlis itself? There was this meme, for those of you who are young enough to know what memes are, like Perlis so small, hashtag, that you go golfing you hit the ball and goes out.
I have to play the devil's advocate. You are sidetracking the question because the argument is that there was something signed.
Yeah.
So whether police feels marginalized or not, the fact is police did not have an agreement back in 1962-63. The question is, are you going to honor?
They don't own the.
Are you going to honor the spirit of the agreement?
No. So you asked about. I think in principle, for me as a lawmaker, if something was signed, we have to honor it. Yeah, we have to honor it. Yeah, and the practical considerations right now is the same thing like our manifesto. We want to abolish tolls, and then suddenly we see, oh my God, we have a 1 trillion ringgit debt. Right? Like, yeah, it's great. We want to do it, but now we're left with a 34 billion ringgit hole in our operating budget. Right? Yeah, we can ask for closure, ask to move forward, but we have no money. How to?
That's the headline for tomorrow. No money.
But that's the reality. And I think because for me, I would like to see the agreement fulfilled. Yeah,
sure.
I think we have to, because then what good is our word? Yeah, we signed.
Yes, thank you very much. I think we have about 20 minutes left. So now I'd like to move on to the final part of the forum, which is questions from the floor. I think what we'll do is we'll take 3 questions at the same time, and you can answer either all of it or one by one. Yes, please.
The opposition now is telling the government, come on, look at your manifesto. You know, we want it seen to be done. And then the government now is telling the opposition about all those terrible things that they have done. And you know what? It's really shocking. I don't want the present government to say, let's move on and forget it. No, we don't want to forget it. I don't even know what's in your manifesto. But I voted for you. And I want to know, as a rakyat here, what can we do? Of course, we can do something in 5 years' time. But what can we do to help move all of us forward? Sabah, Sarawak. Yes, Sarawak. Was it Sarawak for Sarawak, or was it Sarawak for Taib Mahmud? No, because you see, I'm very angry, you know, because I was called up by the orang dulu. Why? Because one of my sons took part in a bersih rally. He was not even staying with me, and I was asked, what kind of mother are you? You don't know what your son did. I said, he doesn't live with me. You know, your son said I'm a racist. You know what? You mentioned about being racist, right? A leader can say, oh, we are not racist. But you would be a racist if you're a leader and you allow your people to be a racist. Betul tak? Huh.
Okay, thank you very much.
So,
wait.
President, I'm glad
Yeah.
Coach M now, dia pun tegur orang-orang dia. Jangan macam tu, jangan macam ni. Masa dulu, the leader says, oh, we're not like this, we're not like this. But, orang-orang dia, dan tu ada dapat yang jamban-jamban ni pun. Tak pernah dia kata, stop that. Well, I'm a cikgu, you see.
Yes.
A cikgu will tell the students, stop that.
Okay. Well, I have to tell you to stop that now because I think we need to offer people other opportunities.
Sarawak, get rid of the big C, the penyakit there.
Only
yes,
Sarawak knows it.
Yeah.
And afternoon, the panel speaker. My question here is put to all the panel speakers because coincidentally you come from 3 different areas. You say New Malaysia. I want to ask the 3 leaders here. You think we already New Malaysia? We got recycle PM. We got recycle CEP people. And we have projected the Rakyat Malaysia building the 22-year rule by the current recycle PM, like the national car, he's still brought there. So what is your idea from PKR? I give PKR chance first because you are Pakatan Harapan. Then maybe my good friend Zambry, Dr. Zambry, and my esteemed Dato Seri Nancy. Are we really new? Are we bluffing ourselves? Thank you.
Good afternoon. My questions to Dato Seri Nancy. There were mixed reactions when the 4 Sarawak component parties from BN left to form GPS. For example, Stumpin MP YB Chong said, old wine in a new bottle. I would like to know in YB Dato Seri's own words, what is the distinction between the old Sarawak BN and this present new GPS? And going forward, how it's like? Thank you.
Okay, I think the two questions were remarkably simple, which is not, is there really such a thing as new Malaysia? In your case, recycle Malaysia. In your case, is there really a big difference between GPS and the old Sarawak Barisan Nasional? So can I get YB Fahmi to answer?
I think it's pretty new. I mean, I'm new. 90 out of 222. That this cohort is, I think, we can bring something new. So I think it's a term that caught on, and it's a term. I feel that the creation of the optics around this new Malaysia is really something done by the media. I think we didn't call it that, yeah. But thanks to the media, and I think the media plays a very critical role in trying to engage ordinary Malaysians in this new era, this new thing. I remember, if I remember correctly, I think it might have been like a station like Awani that started coining the phrase era baru, era Malaysia baru, or something like that. Yes. Yeah. So if anything, it's these people who are in media who themselves initially were shocked into silence for a good part of the night of 9th of May. That eventually they realized, some of them, after talking to them very recently, they said, no, we felt like shackles taken off. So at least for the media, I know that it feels like a new Malaysia.
Thank you. YB Nancy,
no,
the issue.
I want to address about Dr. Mahathir.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he's the same, but he's also different. I mean, I don't feel afraid of him like many UMNO people were afraid of him. I'm not. You know, I can go up to him and say, of course, he's got bodyguards now and everything. But when he was chairing, I could stand up and say, who am I? I'm like just a young 30-something-year-old, right? But I could say, and I think it's different because if you look at how he handles his social media, for example, the people who handle it for him, he's 93 years old. But it seems like he's more active than the 22-year-old MP for Batu, like just in terms of how he engages with people. So it's same but different. Yeah. So it's a bit more nuanced than that.
Okay. YB Nancy, the questions about Sarawak, Taib, Mahmud, and GPS.
Well, I think that is very personal. I don't think I should be answering something that is very personal because when you mention the name Taib Mahmud, I don't think that is professional enough for me to address that. I think we have to respect each other for that, because if there's anything against him, if there's anything he does wrong, it should be dealt with in a different manner. So I hope you understand that. So anyway, on the GPS, when we were in BN, the boss was here. Okay. When now we are in GPS, the boss is there. So that's why they kept telling us, remember, we are friendly but firm. So we can assert our rights. We can assert our rights, especially under the GPS. We can say anything. You can ask Fahmi what I said in Parliament. We do not feel that fear to address what should be ours, what we should claim as ours under the Constitution, under the MA 63, arguing about the oil royalty. That is something that is very new to us. But of course, I must say that even though before that we were with BN, we didn't really have to do that much because it was already a process, as I mentioned. But now, as I said today, if there's anything that if the law is required to be approved, if last time we were to go against the chief whip here, then it doesn't look good as a party. So therefore, today, if we choose to abstain, we can just get out, or we just stay in but not vote for it. We can choose to do so. So it is all within us. We empower ourselves to choose what we want to do and what we feel right for ourselves. So that's GPS.
Thank you.
Just a point on on new and old, I think.
Now, new and recycle.
Fahmi is pretty new, and I'm a pretty old probably. But the most important thing, new or old, you need to recycle it to make it more relevant. But the most important thing, regardless whether it is old or new, philosophically speaking, you have to know the concept of time and space to make you relevant. Satun Mahathir, as you know, like it or not, he was my boss also before. I also faced some experience together with your president now. We were together, spend our time in ISA, including myself though, that time. To me, you asked me, the most important thing, it is how to make you relevant. This is more important. That also implies to UMNO and Barisan Nasional, how to make you relevant in the context of current politics and also future politics. If you can't understand, including some of the questions you raised just now, whether the leaders' behaviors tend to succumb to that kind of practices, behaviors, it's very important for us now. And in all this, whatever we went through, I think that probably gives us a lot of experience. Because the wake-up call, soul searching. I never say that I still stand here, arrogantly but boastful, telling the people, we are still strong. No, you have to accept the fact that you are not a government anymore. Yeah, and then history will judge you. And then that's why I say, come on, everyone. In fact, I think Dato Seri Nancy knows me as well. Probably I always speak a bit in a different tone most of the time, because it's based on the experience that we went through together, and then together with his former boss, his current boss, my former boss at that time. How we went through all that furious, because it's very important to understand. And in the final analysis, go back to the people, understand the pulse of the people. If you fail to understand the pulse of the people, you are doomed to finish. Similarly, this also applies to the current government. Yeah, please understand that. It's all, making us learning more and more how to understand politics in the Malaysian context, in our context, not trying to compare Malaysia and other countries. For example, I was telling Professor James just now, if you're talking about the rise of the far right as well as the populist government in Europe, it's gaining momentum now. It's very popular. You go everywhere because they base on their sentiment on, number one, anti-immigrant and Islamophobia, as well as on the economics deprivation. So you go along this tree, you will get your tractions in politics. Are we going to do that? As Fahmi also mentioned just now, are we going to do that in Malaysia? And then also it's question whether UMNO is going to do that too, or Barisan Nasional is going to do that, or it could be other parties they're going to do that too. I don't think so. In the context of Malaysia, that's why whatever we do in Malaysia, in our country, it must be contextualized in our own experience. You have different races, or now they don't want to use the word races, they call it identities in Malaysia. It's okay. Well, whatever it is, you are Malays, you are Chinese, you are Indian, you are Kadazan, you are Iban, you have everything in this country that is ours.
First of all, I would like to congratulate all the three YBs for being elected in the parliament, then especially for Lebah Pantai. I'm sure 90 of you have been doing a lot of things, interesting things in parliament. Of course, you and your...
Sorry, can you get your questions, please? We're running out of time.
Your friend from Jelutong. One thing is, you said about moving forward, but things like the devolution of power between Sabah and Sarawak, in a response by the minister on 15th of August, said that the committee is in the process of being formed. But why do you need form if the committee is already there? Why do you need to start it back? Even it's already moving halfway. And secondly, in the terms of Taib Mahmud, okay, it's a little bit personal, but you have to think that without Taib Mahmud, there is no Petronas. There is no Petronas without Taib Mahmud because he tabled it in Parliament before it was formed. And CM at that time, he informed that for the development of Petronas, he let Petronas use the money to develop Petronas into what it is, has been as a big company today. Without that, we wouldn't have anything such as things like this. So, and the third one is a question for Dr. Zambry. What do you think of the current issue about the land issue in Perak regarding the freehold title in Perak? Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one question for our new PH government and one question for the representatives of the new opposition. So for YB Fahmi, some studies have said that the majority of the Malays did not vote for PH. What do you think PH can and should do to take away that fear or the siege mentality among the Malays and not allow things to regress and become more racist and Malay-centered or whatever, all right? And my question to the new opposition, the infamous Pasir Salak MP yesterday was quoted as saying that there is a vacuum in the opposition leadership, or specifically in UMNO leadership at the moment. And the new president of UMNO has been conspicuously silent for some time now. Do you agree with him that there is a vacuum in the leadership now in the opposition? And he also said there's a lot of fear among his colleagues in the opposition. Would you agree with that?
Thank you.
Good evening. My question is to Dr. Zambry. Why is it that UMNO does not want a shadow cabinet? Is it not a reliable way to maintain check and balance?
It's a good question.
Thank you.
Can
Thank
I
you.
answer
Yes.
that directly?
Yes.
What
Yes.
we are doing.
Yeah, I think one, we should look seriously at there are several things. One is legislatively. I think we should, even though we have some laws
He's saying that
protect against inciting against racial sentiment. I think a lot more of these, I think some of these laws, maybe we could review, strengthen, or even come up with new laws. I think there are some that's being done, being thought through right now with regards to particularly on sexual harassment. But I think with regards to kind of making racial inciting. Actually, we have enough laws as it is. It's about enforcement. I think at the same time, we have to look at the economic basis, like what Dr. Zambry said. Yeah? If you look at the rise of the populist right, a lot of it comes out of the sense of discontent, the winter of discontent, so to speak. So if you can address that economically and try to allay some of the fundamentals of that. But at the same time, I feel doing away or restructuring some of the apparatus that have been instrumental in perpetuating this sense of fear, like BTN, for example, to some extent PLKN, I think it's necessary. In order for us to come up with a new vocabulary, the kind of work that needs to happen has to go all the way down to schools. We have to break those silos. We have to, I think YB Rembau mentioned about before in Parliament about children leading completely like parallel tracks. Yeah, and if you're in this social circle, you're in this all the way through. Yeah, and I think we have to be very proactive about breaking those, because I fear about the future. I fear about the future of work. I fear that if we are unable to deal with the kind of disruptions happening to the way we think about work, we might see a lot of young people, whether they're Malays, Chinese, or Indians, or across many of the states, without work, and then this would drive those kind of sentiments. You had a question also,
yes,
right?
The question was, why do you want to replicate the committee?
Okay. No, I think for a lot of these committees, it's just about putting people in. Some of it is actually administrative. Yeah. So members of the administration, because we've had a lot of things to go through, it's just assigning the person to be in the committee, to be brought up to speed about what's going on, and then moving on with the work. I know this for a fact. Like, you look at DBKL, a lot of things that could have happened, it's only because no one has been assigned to do that yet. So a lot of it is administrative.
YB Zambry?
If I
Shadow
may,
Cabinet.
I think there are 3 questions there.
Okay.
It's not only Shadow Cabinet. Let me answer the Shadow Cabinet first. In fact, that was one of the points we discussed. In fact, we have already decided to form one. We leave it to the ketua pembangkang, opposition leader, to form his cabinet, his shadow cabinet.
And what position will you take?
I'm not there. I'm not there because you know me. I'm just a small fries in the Dewan Undangan Negeri Perak. It's not. I don't win in that one. That's why I lost by 400. I said it now. I concede that. I know all my brothers here. They really want me to be in the parliament, but I can't be there. Anyway, it's a good question. In fact, that is very relevant because that's part of the Westminster system. You like it or not, you need to have that to play our check and balance there. That's with regard to your question on 910 or Gran Kekal, they call it. That's a part of, actually the policy of Gran Kekal is under the prerogative of the state. The state can decide. That is one. Number 2 is also they need to have some prior arrangement and discussion with the federal government. So I'm not privy to state now of what you know if you were to ask me. But this is the policy of the state, and then the current Menteri Besar, the new Menteri Besar, already stated clearly and openly in the recent Dewan Undangan Negeri that he is not going to proceed unless and until the matter will be brought to Majlis Tanah Negara. So we wait until then. And with regard to your question, ma'am, on the issues of the vacuum of leadership, yeah. You might see from which angle of the vacuums, because you can ask for certain personalities, he will say this, he will say that. As you know, the most important is to strike the balance. The most important, and we know that for a fact that this is very hard at this stage, being in opposition yourself. We experience being a government all this while. Imagine that suddenly you fall into this categories, and then how to adjust yourself. I think you really need your time a bit, and then sometimes you shoot here, orang Melayu kita shoot here tak kena, tembak sana tak kena, tengok sini, tembak dia orang tak kena. So you have to accept the fact that. But I believe Zahid and also other members, including Khairi and the rest. But the most important thing is the collective responsibility for all members of UMNO and Barisan Nasional to prove their worth in the parliament. And you cannot use the old way of shouting, yelling at people. Now the party UMNO in particular and Barisan Nasional, it must go into the Dewan with your intellectuals, capacities, as well as to discuss policy, advocacy. That is the way forward from my point of view.
Okay, YB Nancy, would you like to say something about the work of the committees?
During our time, the committee was already there. The committee comprised of officers from the state government, Sarawak and also Sabah, and those who are already here in the MOF and all those civil servants. So I believe PH would not have much problem with that because they are already doing that job. Not much of politicians involved actually, but we brought in all the ministers from Sarawak and Sabah.
And the stakeholders.
I hope they will replicate that in terms of getting all those parties involved, because the civil servants are the ones who really doing the job. They are the ones doing the calculation. They are the ones who look into all the documentations. So I believe that could be continued on by the PH government. Yeah.
Thank you, YB.
Really, new Malaysia is really a new Malaysia or not? Because from my point of view, there's nothing new about it. Because opposition behaving like they are still the government. The government is behaving like they are still the opposition. They're blaming each other, so no one talks after 100 days.
I take full responsibility. I coined the title, so it's not new
No one
Malaysia.
talks about policy. Yeah. Policy of new Malaysia. What happened? Why suddenly you come up with the Pro-3, then you abolish the MRT3, the Circle Line. So people from Milawati don't have public transport to work in Hartamas. The only way is to go through the Duke Highway. So increase of cost, buying cars and everything. So no one talks about this. After GST, you're talking politics and then you're talking about policy. GST you abolish. Until today, no single pricing coming down. SST is coming up this Saturday, and Peniaga already said they will increase the price. So can you talk about rakyat now? Stop talking politics, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Is it the job of the opposition, or what is the role of the opposition in terms of accountability for the government manifesto? Because I say this and ask this because you hear sometimes now opposition members saying that the government needs to achieve all of its manifesto. But what if some of those ideas are wrong? So, if you're the opposition, surely you don't want the government to achieve its manifesto because they are the wrong ideas. They are things you disagree with. And so, is it the role of the opposition to get the government to achieve all of its manifesto or to achieve none of it?
Thank you.
I just want to ask one question from YB Zambry. Okay. We are living in a multiracial society. What is your view about what's going to happen in Pekan? Bangkit Melayu. Is UMNO condoning such a behavior? It's frightening because UMNO is ethnocentric. Dia tak buka pun pintunya untuk bangsa-bangsa lain. Please answer from your heart.
Many thanks for the wonderful discourse by the three YBs. As a civil society, irrespective of whatever political ideologies and manifestos there are, as a civil society, as an individual, this is what I like to see for the country. I like to see this government work really, really hard to giving opportunities to everybody at grassroots levels right up to the top. And the opposition can be a real check and balance to make sure that they are doing their job. And I also like to see our currency be improved. I think that today the currency for US had gone to 4 ringgit and 4 cents, which is really quite tough. I want to see better houses for everybody. And I want to see a clean and responsible government. Is that hard to achieve? You let me know. Thank you.
I think we came here looking at the title, how to move forward. But we seems to be still going in circle. But at the same time, I want to refute some of the statement was said that we Malaysians are tired of listening to all these wrongdoings and all this spending. Actually, it's not true. I think over the last couple of years, we didn't get any information. There was a lot of misinformation, a lot of fabricated information. Now, I think there is a big portion of people who are happy to hear what's happening. So, and have a proper closure, as YB mentioned earlier. We need to have a proper closure, so it is not repeated anymore in the future. By whether it's the same government or the future anyone is taking over, this is not repeated. So, yes, we need to have institutional reforms. However, the government needs to spur the economy. I think that's the biggest problem now. The economy is going down and people are suffering. And with all these scandals being broken up, breaking up, it's interesting. Yes, it's nice, like a soap opera, but people's pocket are not being filled up. People are suffering, especially the B40 and the M40s, the middle class, right? So, what is the government intend to do? Can we have plans to help the people to have some money in their pocket? And my other concern is government is already, even though there are some things which was done by the government, previous government was, questionable, but there are some actions did help the people. Like for example, BRIM. It does help some people. Maybe not everyone is the targeted people need it, but it does help. But your government is already planning before helping them to fill up the pocket. You're already planning to reduce it. You're already planning to actually completely remove it. You know, we had to know the announcement yet, but this is where is the danger. Within 100 days, we are trying to change so many things, but people are suffering. I think the theme should be how we can help the people on the ground, and I would love to hear how the government plans to do that, because it's all about, of course, by cutting the MRT 3 and all that, it reduces the government debts, but at the same time, it also affects the economy's growth because jobs are lesser jobs going to be available. So how do we going to counter that? So that's the question I have. Second one is to YB Nancy. If MA 63 is an agreement which has been signed and done with, what's stopping from anybody to take it up from a legal point of view? If it is an agreement clearly stating that Sarawak gets 100% of the oil revenue, I think there shouldn't be any issues from that avenue. But I don't know what is the concern. Of course, we are talking about consensus and discussions, but it is the issue, or is it not clearly stated? I haven't seen MA 63, so I'm not sure whether it's available. So that's a question. Third one to YB. Sorry.
Please finish off.
Yeah, this is the last one. I think YB Zambry, UMNO has like majority of the seats. Actually, for the opposition, it's a very strong opposition. And you have a lot of talented people as well. But I think one of the major issue here is we had a former premier who is tainted with so many scandals, so many issues, a lot of things actually brought forward. But UMNO continue to insist in either not openly telling, okay, what is wrong, should be seen as wrong, or stop supporting it. But there seems to be no clear stand. You continue saying, every now and then there seems to be a change of no clear stand on the issue of Dato Seri Najib. I think that needs to bring to a closure as well, because now he's no longer a premier. I think this has to be taken out and let the rule of law takes place, and UMNO move on as a strong opposition and look at how to deal with check and balance work rather than worry about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
On the new Malaysia, my hope was just like yours. You see, we all accepted the loss. That's why Fahmi mentioned we were so calm. On the 9th of May, we were so calm. Everybody accepted the loss. I mean, for us, we accepted it, but we want to move on. When I say move on, does not mean that you close the door in terms of what investigation you want to go on with. It's up to you, because the law is there for you to proceed with. But of course, we want to see all the good things happening. Like you're talking about the transportation, public transport. It's really good. I was very much in charge of it when SPAD was there. We were talking about how we save time for the people and how people could save in terms of money when they go by public transport and it's no traffic jam. So that's one of it. We want to see that. You're asking about the MA63. Now, this is why we want to enforce that. Because a lot of it is also incorporated in the federal constitution, and one of it is the review of the grants for Sarawak and Sabah. The special grants to be supposed to be reviewed was reviewed 10 years. First was Tun Dr. Ismail, and after that was reviewed by Tun Razak, and after that there was no review at all. And until today, Sarawak still receive 16 million per year. 16 million per year. Now you're smiling because we are the ones who produce the oil. And is it fair for us if we don't make noise? So now, that's why you must understand that. And there are a lot of other infringements of the federal constitution which were there to safeguard Sarawak and Sabah. So quite a number of things. That's why we have to work
No, I think the question is, what is stopping you from suing the federal government to get what you want?
Oh,
I mean, that was the question, right? That was the question.
No, the thing is, you see, we were, before this we were with BN, and we were already on the talking terms on how we should be compensated. And then now we have the oil mining ordinance. And for your information, Petronas and the state government, they are already talking. So if you sue each other, nobody will win. What we want is to make sure that, you know, it's all about considering what each other have done for each other. Petronas, without, you were mentioning, without that Mahmud, Petronas won't be there, and West Malaysians wouldn't be enjoying it. Okay? So, talking about that. So, we are now talking about what we should be given. And then we should not just be talking about dollars and cents. It's about what each other had been contributing, because Petronas also contributed a lot to Sarawak as well. But up to what, when you talk about quantum, was it really benefiting Sarawak more or benefiting others? So we have to discuss on, we have to sit down. The federal government, Petronas and the state government, actually they're all sitting down with each other. Nobody else, others don't have to give us the new deal, because others do not have the local standby to tell us what the new deal is supposed to be taken by Sarawak.
Okay.
So anyway, that's why we are not talking about suing each other, but we talk to each other amicably to make sure that the promises made to Sarawak, be it by the previous government or the present government, should be implemented. So that's what we are fighting for. Thank you.
YB Zambry, I think the key question is that why is it so hard for UMNO to admit all the wrongdoings previously?
Oh yeah, we are. In fact, for your information, in fact, right from the very beginning, I mentioned that we need to do the soul searching, yeah, to correct all the past mistakes and so on and so forth. We are human. Even the party is human. And then as far as the very much having a human, characteristic in it, because we all characterize the party. But the most important thing to me is to look into the future. Before that, let me answer some your question on manifestos. Of course, the role of the oppositions, like it or not, you are responsible to do the checks and balance. And there's something promised to the people, for example. Of course, like it or not, during the campaigning periods, the people will, of course, be attracted to some of your ideas. Because now you go to the street, people start asking about that. Of course, that is not going to be the focus alone. If we want to survive, as I mentioned just now as well, you have to come out also with other policy initiatives as well. To provide a new spectrum of for the Malaysian. You mentioned about the whole issues, including, I think now I'm answering also your mom question about bangkit previously about the crease wielding and so on and so forth. But let me also pose this question to you. Over the years, you have heard of all this, and you come from a Malay party. Nancy whispered to me, it's a the nature of the Malay party, so sometimes you have to do programs according to your party. But the most important thing is this, the nature of this party. Yeah, let's be frank also, but be open about this as well. Since its existence, did you ever experience any upheavals caused by UMNO in Malaysia? So, because we have been, as a result of a certain being a professor yourself, you studied past how certain instances or certain political crises caused by a certain element or racial element, normally it will be pacified by UMNO. That's why those certain parties who, the party leaders who did not agree with UMNO, they finally form a different form of party. I don't want to mention those parties. You know yourself very well, but I do not want to call them a very extremist party and so forth. But the most important thing is that what is the position of UMNO? What is the stance of UMNO? And then even you can ask the current Prime Minister himself, who was the president of UMNO before. Yeah, what was his stand all this while? Despite people call him the what they call ultra Malay. No, it's not only dictator, brother. It's not only Mahathir. People call him the real ultra Malay. Yeah, it's ultra Malay in this book. No, the Malay Lama, for example, whoever it. But
no. So sorry, YB.
I want to answer.
Yes.
Indirectly.
No, the question she asked is that with the recent event Bangkit Melayu, what is UMNO doing?
No, we are doing. In fact, you should not be. There should not be any element of fear, worry. Some people, because of what we are reading around, it's just like an attempt to fight against the other races. This is part of the program organized by, but unless if you really heard that there is something element of trying to, create uneasiness among the people living in the country, that you have the basis to, complain. But your point tadi on what? Yes, and our stand was very clear. We have repeatedly mentioned this. In fact, the president himself was mentioned. If you have any case against him, please proceed as quickly as possible. The problem is that until now, you still waiting, and then of course it start charging, but when it's going to be over. And then as far as UMNO and Barisan Nasional is concerned, we have the new leadership, and Zahid and also his team has started something to move forward. That is more important for us. Of course, it will take some time for us to step up our plan of action. But of course, I must tell you, we are moving forward.
All right, thank you, YB. YB Fahmi, you have the last word.
I think about this old Malaysia, new Malaysia. What are people really concerned about? It's very true. I think people are worried about what's on the food that's on their plate or lack thereof. I, for one, see as my legislative agenda several key things, including trying to deal with urban poverty, trying to look at the question, or looking at the question of the future of work. I think these are very concrete things. They're not polemical. They're not rhetorical. They're not like. But it's also quite boring in the sense that there's no drama around. Like, we're talking about the future of work. No, it's talking about the future of work. But the thing that I think needs to happen, which we will have to wait until the 19th of October to hear what the Minister of Finance has to say about the kind of policies, programs that we want to put in place going forward. Whether BRIM will be continued or not, I think we will know authoritatively on the 19th of October, if not earlier than that. But that is the date when we will lay out the budget for 2019. I think pay close attention to how the different groups of people will have a lot of their issues dealt with or not. And then I think we go from there. I think there's maybe just one last thing. I find that the most important thing in this new environment is Malaysians have a very, very important role now. That I think we have to strip away the idea that democracy happens only once every 5 years, that democracy ends once we cast our vote. No, I think it's very important to continue that process of engagement. And how do you do that? Actually, by engaging leaders or engaging political parties through things like social media, attending town hall sessions. I've had 3 town hall sessions in Lembah Pantai. I think that's too many, but it's necessary because for the longest time, Malaysians, whether they're in the state of Sarawak, whether they're in Perlis, I think we felt that the government does not listen. So now that we have this new opportunity, this chance to break away from the past, whether it's got to do with scandals, it's got to do with the way we administer the country, it's got to do with the way that we appreciate Sabah and Sarawak, that process of engagement has to happen at so many levels. Whether it's in Starbucks or whether it's in the Sarawak Club, engagement must take place. I, for one, am doing our conversation earlier. I, for one, am doing that on my own little way in Lembah Pantai. In fact, I have to leave right after this because we have a program in Sentosa. But the point is, don't think that democracy ended on the 9th of May. But you must participate. Without your participation, government and opposition will fail.
Right. And with that word, I'd just like to thank my guests. I think you all agree with me that they've really been really good in trying to defend their own interests and also the interests of the party. And I think I have to be quite frank here and say that, you know, the best person who really knew to kung fu his way out of everything is my good friend, YB Dato Zambry. But thank you very much for coming.